Proven Not Perfect community. This is Chantra Powell. I am looking forward to this conversation, sharing this with you today. So I taped this back at the end of 2021 with Laura Marie Kaiser. Laura Marie Kaiser is an entrepreneur. She has been involved in a power seat behind the scenes, helping to pull together the entrepreneurship community in Wisconsin, in the Midwest, at the Wisconsin Technical Council. She is one of those people that she knows who to go to. She knows who to ask. She knows where the bodies are. She knows where the money is, the money bag is. I got a chance to meet her when I was introduced to the entrepreneurship community and, quite frankly, the investing community in the Midwest. It was immediately mutual admiration, and she's somebody that I've kept close in my life since meeting her. You're going to enjoy this conversation. It's actually really fun. Before I launched this, I went back and I listened, and I found myself just loving hearing what we talked about, and her energy, her vibe. You know, she is a single mom who has always been a single mom. Her son is now a young adult. She has reinvented herself many times over in the space of business and entrepreneurship, and she's doing some really fun stuff that she's going to share with us. But I'm going to tell you, this talk, you're going to hear a little bit about our conversation. So, you know, just in Proven Not Perfect style, you'll enjoy our connect as a conversation, but then also you're going to hear some really poignant opinions about women in boardrooms, women in entrepreneurship startups, women in investing, women who are pushing to make a difference and to be different, and the men, quite frankly, behind them that can sometimes shake the tree and give them a wake-up call, can sometimes be the push behind them, seeing themselves where they need and want to get to. And that's the ones we're going to talk about today. So, hey, enjoy this conversation with me and Laura Marie Kaiser. Hi, Laura Marie Kaiser.
Hi, Chantra. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's so good to see you in Wisconsin, right?
Go Badgers.
Go Badgers. Right on.
Yeah, we're competing in the NCAA Final Four tonight, so I'm beyond excited. And I guarantee I'll be switching from my maroon to my cardinal red before the night's over.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm sending all the good vibes to Wisconsin. There's, you know, after 16 years of my life, going there with one baby at 18 months old and leaving with 3, I tell you, there's a big chunk of us, a big chunk of the Powells that, you know, will always have a heart for Wisconsin for sure.
I'm still hoping you come back at some point. I realize it's probably a stretch the longer you stay there, but
I've heard that before, but I think you're right. I think, you know, the closer we get to the beach and the further away from the snowblower, it gets really hard, you know?
Hey, it was like 68 degrees here yesterday, though.
Was it really? Oh my God. Yes. Crazy. Okay, so here's the thing. Maybe if I ever would have experienced a Wisconsin winter that's 68 degrees in December 15th, maybe, just maybe, we would never have given a yes to move away, right?
Well, we did follow it up with tornadoes and thunderstorms last night. So there you go. Always an offset, right?
That's the Wisconsin that I know and love. Yes.
Absolutely. I'm not sure what keeps us here all year, but I think it's just the fact that we have the different seasons that we can at least look forward to.
Oh my gosh. And I'm going to tell you what, I think it almost sounds a little bit cliche when you hear people say it, that the summers in Wisconsin, the sky is never bluer, the lakes are never more peaceful, you know, and it really is a true thing.
It really is. There is no better place to be in, I think. Well, the beginning of winter is beautiful. When the snow first comes and it's novel, it's gorgeous. But the springs, the summers, and the falls are all to die for. I agree.
Right. I would agree. I would agree. Well, sister, hey, I can talk to you forever. We both know that. I want the world to know who you, at least our listeners, which I believe could be the world, who knows?
Sure.
But I want them to know who you are. So Laura Marie Kaiser and I had the pleasure of meeting probably, I feel like it was like 2013-ish. It feels like around that time. Laura Marie is a badass in her own right. She's made a name for herself in not only the Madison, Wisconsin area, but I would very comfortably say the Midwest investment entrepreneurship scene, and probably reaching west and east through relationships that have been extended through the impact that you've made there. You also have been not only interested in advancing your own ideas and interests as an entrepreneur, but you've lent a hand, more than a hand, in some instances, a push and a shove to many women to get into that space and to thrive in that space as well. I just have to say, your willingness to make connections for others, and to be a maven in that, I just give you so many flowers for that. I think it's wonderful. We don't talk up enough the badass women who are so confident and so comfortable making more badass women. Sometimes we anchor on the ones who tend to believe it's a solo act. I don't believe it's a solo act, and I know you don't either. So Laura, please tell everybody who you are.
So I am I'm a single mom. I was a single mom since day one. Yeah. And my son is now almost 19. In fact, he just got his first tattoo, which is really weird. He got his first tattoo from the same guy who gave me my first tattoo. So I really feel kind of old and kind of antiquated at this point that my son is old enough to get a tattoo, but let alone, there's like this generational thing. I clearly normalized tattoos, so I can't really say too much about it.
Right.
I have about 30. So I was that tattooed banker that people said, you don't look like a banker.
Yeah.
That really pushed me into that category of what does a banker look like to you? Because I'm a banker. I'm a branch manager at a bank. I'm a single mom. I have tattoos. I'm in my 30s and I am a banker. So, kind of breaking out the norm of what people should look like and what kind of roles that they should fit into don't always apply.
That's
right. I think that being in Madison definitely kind of allowed me to do that. I know in more conservative circles, that's still, being reassessed and reimagined for a lot of women. But for me, it's always been that thing that you heard in the back of your head when you were a kid. If you really want to find your true passion, go do something that you love to do and then find someone to pay you to do it. Yeah. So for me, it was banking for a really long time. I loved helping customers and helping clients find solutions. And there's definitely challenges in the banking industry with being a woman and being a mom, and ended up leaving there in 2016 and then ended up working for a statewide nonprofit that worked a lot with entrepreneurship. And I was able to really cultivate, like you said, my passion for connections and being able to get all the same people together. And hey, I know this badass and I know this other badass, and these two badasses should meet. And here's a man who will help support their badassery. How can I get him involved in the conversation? And that was a really big deal to me, that job allowed me to bring all those connections together and being able to kind of further push entrepreneurship. And then in 2018, I had so much leftover passion for social media that I didn't have enough time to do at my job, that I started a social media consulting company called Engage Social Media. And so that is still alive and well. I've kind of, it's nice. It allows me to kind of ebb and flow. It's completely at my control of which clients I take on and when, and how much I have bandwidth for. And my big thing is always to under promise and over deliver. Yes. So it was, if I take you on, it's because I say I can do 10 hours a week. I'm probably going to do 15 hours a week because that's what you deserve. And I don't take on any clients that I'm not passionate about. So that's always been a really big thing for me too. And then I've always loved working with chocolate. So then during the pandemic, I actually started a fudge and caramel business.
Wow. Really, I didn't even know this, Laura. This is new news, hot off the press. Wow.
Yeah. So Simply Impeccable Fudge. It's been so fun. The very first thing was a dark chocolate peanut butter fudge that literally melts in your mouth. I can't even.
Oh my gosh. I've got to have some.
It's so good. It's so good. So it started off as that, and it was probably September, October of last year. And now it's kind of blown up into, it could be all of my downtime with being able to do that. So I recently left my full-time job that you knew about. And now I'm kind of focusing more on, I'm working part-time for my favorite attorney friend, Erin Ogden with Ogden Glazer and Schaefer. And then I'm also doing consulting work for my social media company, and I'm doing all my fudge and caramels on the side. So and it's still open other opportunities, because why not, right?
Right on. Well, hey, sister, Engage is going to get a call, because I'm just at the point where I need that myself. So, so that's a call for another day. But we're gonna we're gonna be talking. I'm gonna be pleading with you to consider me worthy enough to get your time. So let me just go back and highlight something that you talked about, and that was having an opportunity to find a man who was willing to support these badassery women, right? And in their businesses. Why that point is so important to me, Laura, is it doesn't fall at all a coincidence that we even met, right? As I was an angel investor with one of the prominent firms in the Midwest, and for sure in the Milwaukee area, by a gentleman who has a name that everyone respects, appreciates, and most respond to, Mr. Tim Keene.
Absolutely.
Has been a mentor to me, who established me in the Angel Investor Network when Chantra would go to the dinner evening meetings and, quite frankly, be one of maybe 2 women, 3 on a great day, and certainly the only African-American woman, and actually the only African-American at that time. Yes. And it's because he sponsored me to be confident in walking in that room, that I was able to not only learn, but fully participate and be confident participating that way. And that actually led to me getting to know you. What is this notion about the men and the control that they have in the space of investment, which a lot of times becomes the go, no go for women-owned businesses? What do you think?
I think it's really interesting that it really sometimes comes down to men don't want to give up that power of the old boys club. And then you have a whole slew of men who think to themselves, I'm tired of being in the old boys club. How can we open it up to more people? And I really do think that it's become as simple as, either a man wants to be part of the movement where everybody's included at the table, and it's not only included, but encouraged to come sit at the table, or they just like things status quo, and they just don't like when things change. And it's not that they don't want women at the table. It's just that what's wrong with the men that are already at the table? I think they kind of have that mentality of, yeah, but this is the way we've always done it. The table is already full of men who know what they're talking about. We just don't have any more room.
Yeah, so it's like a comfort.
Yeah, I think it's that. And I don't think that there's a single man that I've met in the investor world or the entrepreneur world who would say women shouldn't be at the table, or, people of color shouldn't be at the table. There shouldn't be more diversity. I don't even think it's that. It's just, we're already good just the way we are. So why do we don't really need to open it up, because things will change then. And that makes me uncomfortable. So I think it's more of a unused to comfort, or unused to change and discomfort with change than it is about opening up to everybody. But I think it's like that what do you call it? That forward progression of being able to say things need to change so that more people are sitting at the table. And that's a huge step that a lot of people have to take to be comfortable with that, I think.
It is huge. And I often think, what's the catalyst to getting permission for that discomfort, right? One, I think it does take a fearless visionary to acknowledge that there's got to be other perspectives and voices that would be useful.
Right.
Let's be very honest, in giving us a position of being more successful, right? And so I think that fearless visionary sometimes becomes the catalyst for here's where the gaps are, right?
Yes.
In my case, I believe presenting unique skills and experiences in M&A in a corporate sense, and then having run commercial and operational P&Ls, I believe that, I was known to have a specific mental capacity and strategic ability that invited me to the room to have impact. And if I'm very honest, Laura, my first meeting or so, I didn't feel overwhelmed with hellos and welcomes, but
Right.
I did feel confident with the person who invited me to be in the room in the first place.
And that's big. That's
Open
big.
the door, right? It opens
Right.
the door for you to speak up and for you to demonstrate your impact. And then I think everybody felt like there's some value in having this voice here. And so how do you get that? How do you get men to feel there's value in having the voices there?
That's the $100 question right there, or
Yeah.
should say more like $100 million question. And I think it's the more that women not force the conversation, but the more women feel confident in being in those spaces, whether they're initially comfortable or not. I think it's important for men to see women and people of color in those spaces, being able to say, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, I bring a lot of value, and here's what I've got to say.
Oh my God, that's right.
I think a lot of women walk into a space and they think, oh, I'll kind of, be a fly on the wall and I'll kind of observe and I'll come, but I'm not really comfortable saying anything yet because I don't know what I'm talking about. Or, all these men feel comfortable, speaking up. Maybe I'll just kind of, and that's, I think really what it amounts to is women have to own all the things that they are confident about and be able to say, I am going to speak not only my truth, but my thoughts, my values, my ethics.
Yes.
And I am going to contribute them to this conversation because that's the only way that conversations are going to change is by hearing other voices.
Light years. I mean, golf claps, any kind of claps, thunderous claps all around.
Right.
There it is, because it is not okay just to be in the room. I have an example of something that happened in about 2007, 8. I was at Johnson Controls, and I was at that time working for the business unit president. And there was a business unit operations review with the corporate C-suite, right? And so here our leadership team shows up, in the big boardroom for Johnson Controls, and the COO at the time was, yielding everything that he did, right? And going into the room, all of the C-suite leaders from our business unit kind of went around the table and sat down. I was the newest one to the leadership team. I watched them all sit, and I sat on the row away from the table. Well, I didn't think anything was wrong with this because I've kind of felt like, to your point, like the women, like me.
Right.
I thought, well, I just got here. I don't know anybody. This is my first ops review. Maybe I should position myself to, just kind of witness and see.
In a submissive.
Yes. Let's be right. Well, I'm going to tell you this. The COO at the time was a man by the name of Keith Wandell, who later became CEO of Harley. You remember Keith?
Yep.
Keith walked in the room and he looks around and he sees me off the table. And he said, do you really choose to take yourself out?
Ooh. Wow.
He probably doesn't even to this day remember that little impact that he had on a mid-career woman called Chandra Powell at that time.
I just got goosebumps. I'm not lying.
But sister, it didn't take that conversation it never had to happen for me again, because not only did I scoot up to the table, but I positioned myself confidently there.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, maybe he turned on a monster, because from that point on, There wasn't a boardroom that I would walk in that I did not believe that I not only should be seen, but I should be heard, right?
Absolutely.
And that was huge for me, monumental. So when you say, gosh, women, gosh, people of color, we've got to own ourselves in those spaces and show up responsibly, right? No permission, because what do you have to lose? You weren't in it before anyway, right? Yep. So is losing really getting kicked out if you're going to stay at a minimal level? Or is losing being there and having zero impact? What?
Right. It's also interesting, the women, to me, I should say not even just women, but anybody who sits in a room and chooses not to speak. If you're there, you're not there to be a sponge and observe everything. You're there to participate. And so anybody who's at that table should be contributing thoughts, should be contributing opinions, ideas, because it's unfortunately, at the end of the day, if people are sitting at the table that are not speaking, what's going to end up happening? The people that are speaking, those ideas are going to carry over into what happens next.
That's right.
If you're not speaking and contributing your truth, no matter who you are, then you can't blame anybody for not changing anything if you're not saying anything and stepping up and advocating for your own passions.
So let's talk about that, because, girl, I think you're right on. I really do. What is it that when you see the best of the best do what they do, right? Where do you think their source of confidence comes from when they walk in the room and it's either all men or just doesn't look anything like them? The ones that you've seen do it the best, what would you say are the three things that you take note of?
I think
you have seen so many entrepreneurs.
I have. And I think the things that stand out to me the most are when people decide that they're going to make an impact. And you can see it from the second they walk in the room. If they walk in the room and they walk to the middle and they introduce themselves to people and they stick their hand out and they say, I am so-and-so, this is my company, or, this is why I'm here. And you're very upfront about that. I think that is huge. And it doesn't take an extroverted person to do that. It takes the inner drive of, I'm here to make a difference. My time here is limited. I might as well make an impact while I have an audience.
Yeah.
And I think the big quote that I've lived with my entire life is, opportunity dances with those already on the dance floor.
Ooh,
that's
girl.
Great.
What?
H. Jackson Brown, I think, is who came up with that. I know I get goosebumps every time I see it. But there's so many people that, for example, assume that just because that they're an entrepreneur, they're going to get tons of accolades thrown at them or money thrown at them. No, you need to go out there and put yourself out there and let people know that you're there, why your story is different, why your story matters. Why should people care about you?
Yes.
That's great that you have a great product or you have a great service, but what makes you special? Put yourself out there. And if you don't put yourself on the dance floor, nobody's going to dance with you.
No one.
So, and probably as an investor, you could speak to that. That the opportunities are coming to those who are putting themselves on the dance floor to start with.
Yes. And it starts with, I'm going to tell you this, as an investor, when we would have businesses come in, I could tell literally within 15 seconds.
Yes.
20 tops if I was going to buy what they were selling.
Yes.
Because the ones who came in, who had the confidence and the charisma, and they literally oozed, I know what I'm talking about. Man, you couldn't stop them. And now I have to say this because people sometimes confuse, I know what I'm talking about, with being a ruthless know-it-all, right? I'm not talking about the ruthless know-it-all. Right. Because the I know what I'm talking about can sometimes sound like that is a wonderful question that I've truly never thought of.
Yes.
Give me a day and I will have an answer.
It's the difference between cocky and confident.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And those are the ones that not only get you at hello, they engage the crowd and everyone believes, right? And I think it's almost a flywheel effect because once they put that out there, then they get more of it back
And then
Right.
it keeps going.
Yes.
And
It's a snowball. Wisconsin snowball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've seen it go the other way too, right? Where within 15 seconds, the person is so withdrawn and seeking, and
right.
I don't know, you're just like, it could be great, but not now.
I think the other level to that is people knowing their value. Because
tell us more about that.
If you walk into a situation and you think, like, for example, with the fudge and caramels, when I started, I was very new and I was selling them for $10 a box.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I'm recouping my supplies and I'm, paying myself a little bit for time and effort and, blah, blah, blah. I justified it a certain way. And I had somebody reach out to me that I will never forget. And she said, you are worth a lot more. These are worth a lot more than $10 a box. I think you should charge 15. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And she said, well, how much time do you spend washing all the dishes afterwards from all the different times that you use different pots and pans and utensils for each one? And how much time do you go out and spend buying all the supplies to make all the fudge? And how much time do you spend running to the post office to mail all this stuff? She goes, you deserve to be compensated for all of that. And that kind
of wait a minute. You're telling me she was telling you to actually place a value on you? Like,
yeah. I mean, crazy,
what?
right?
There's a novel product.
Not just the product, but on myself.
Yes.
And that really, I thought to myself, I'm going to stick my crown back on. What was I thinking? Yeah.
That's right on.
And I think that any entrepreneur, to your point, when they walk into a room and you're already sold on them, but, and I think that it adds another level if they're sold on their own value.
Yes.
Because if somebody walked in and said, yeah, I've got this great product and I've whatever, they have confidence and they devalue what it's worth, or they think, well, I'm really new. I don't really know what I'm doing yet. That's instantly going to turn you off.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
It's confidence and being able to tell your story and know your own value.
Girl, so it's all those things.
Know your own value and then add tax.
Yes. And whether it feels right or not, add the tax, right? That idea, Laura, is exactly what Keith Wandell was saying, right?
Right.
You're in the boardroom because you were invited. You chose to say the cost of admission was to just come in, right? Versus the real price is you're here. So now value me because I value me, right?
Well, here's the other added level. If you walked into that room and every seat at the table was already occupied, what would you do? Are you going to take a back row, or are you going to choose to say, could you please shift over so I can join you in here? And that's really, those are the kind of mentalities that stick with me. Yeah. And I have a degree in sociology. So I'm definitely like a people watcher and a people analyzer with what they choose to do. And it's really interesting to see how many people will just default to sitting in the back row.
Yes.
I really want to be at this table. Could you please move over? Because that's what you really need to do in order to show up.
Yes. I'm going to tell you what, at the time when I was given that coaching, I for sure was a backseat, don't rock the boat, less confident version of myself. My most recent foray in the boardroom, there were many days where I even invited myself in if there was a conversation that I thought I needed to be a part of because it in fact impacted something. No invitation needed because I am a part of the executive team and I have a voice and it's important and I'm gonna be heard when I believe I should be. But that's something that we step into. But I'm gonna say this. We step into it sometimes once we've been kicked in the butt or inspired in some way. Very few of us just wake up like this, right? What was your journey to get to the place where you were so solidly clear that you not only belong there, but you have a voice?
You know, I honestly have thought about this recently just because I think in the last 5 years, the term disruptor has become kind of cool and trendy. And I think I've been a disruptor since way before it was cool, except it wasn't really appreciated back then.
Yeah.
It was, I want to work smarter and not harder. So how can I change things to make things more efficient? How can I, you know, and I've always had that kind of mentality at every job I've had. And it's not always, it hasn't always been appreciated. You know, I think it's, a lot of people have that this is the way we've always done it mentality, like you mentioned at the beginning. And I think that somebody like me that comes in, you know, going Mach 10 with tons of ideas, who wants to make a difference and who wants to not only be seen, but help other people be seen and brought into the conversation. Sometimes it's tampered down, and you really have to kind of look at it like, okay, if this situation isn't going to allow me to do what I need to do, then how do I do it a different way? How do I? You have to keep asking yourself those kind of questions, and you have to keep putting yourself into a situation where your soil is being nurtured. And if that pot isn't good for you, take yourself as that flower out of that pot and put yourself in new soil, because maybe it's not you as the flower, it's the soil that you're in. So I think it's one of those things where you have to look at it as, okay, it's not, maybe it's you. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we make bad choices, and we do the best we can with what we have at the time. But I think a lot of times it's people perceive not being welcomed, encouraged, listened as something to do with them internally. And it's not. It's to do with the people around you and the environments around you that are not really supportive. And so it's put yourself in a position where you are more supported and you're getting, you know, the right validation to be able to hear what you want to say.
That's right on. Ooh, so good, so good, so good. So now we've kind of gotten moving past 2020 and quarantine and all of that. And you've had a lot of women who have maybe left corporate boardrooms and traditional jobs and have been inspired to start their own, right? Hence, you know, myself starting a family business as well as some other entrepreneurial ventures.
Woo-hoo!
Yes. And you as well, with your 3 businesses. The thing is, once you jump into entrepreneurism and you've been around it for a while, when you jump in, you don't just do one thing, you do like 5. Like, that's crazy, right?
Yes.
So my question to you is, do you think now there is going to be an increased receptivity to the impact of women entrepreneurs on local economy and even growing, right? Do you think there's an openness now that wouldn't have been there before? Or do you think we're still fighting the same battles?
That's a great question. I think that there's levels of complexity to that. I think that women are being taken more seriously as entrepreneurs, but I don't think it's to the level of male entrepreneur recognition.
Yeah.
I think that when men start a business, it's seen more as, how can you scale this? How can you grow this? Where are they going to go with it? And I think for women, it's, oh, that's cute. You have a little side job, or you have a little, granted, mine are side jobs, but you know, I don't have any passion to take either one of those right now into a full-time gig.
Yeah.
But that's my choice. Could I? Absolutely. Would people take me seriously? Yes, because I would put myself in the position to say, this is my passion. This is my job. I'm going to scale it. And I have a phenomenal support system around me that is able to help me do that if I want to do that. One of my really good friends is my attorney, Erin Ogden, that has helped me through my very first LLC when I turned the engaged social media into an LLC. Because my first client was Foxconn. So I kind of wanted to make sure everything was legit.
That's a little client.
Exactly. But there are tons of people around me in my support system. And I think that that's what women need more than anything else. They need a support system around them, whether it's family, friends, community, their networks, industry experts that can help guide them. They need a support system that they can turn to say, hey, I'm not quite sure about this. What do you think about this? Or, you know, I've got this new idea that I could do X, Y, and Z with. What do you think about that? And I think it's women needing that support system versus men just automatically pay for it and they'll pay someone to do it for them. Yeah. Women tend to turn to their networks and say, these are the people that I trust. I'm going to ask their opinion.
That's right.
Men, I think, have a tendency to more say, oh, I'll just hire an accountant to do it. Versus women think, what accountants do I know that can help me do that because I know that they believe in me? Yeah. So I think that's kind of the difference between male startups and female startups is women lean into their network of trusted people.
I feel like you just hit on something too. where I tend to notice male entrepreneurs, especially if you meet them 20, 30 years into the game, they give you their resume of how many businesses they've grown and sold.
Yeah.
Women entrepreneurs 30 years into the game tend to be excited to tell you about the accounting firm that they grew from one person to now 300. The same firm.
Very different definitions of growth.
Very different definitions of growth, right? There's no right or wrong, but I think it gets back to the continuity and the sustainability. When the women are inspired, they tend to, it becomes almost another family member and an appendage, right?
Yes.
And a sell really is like sort of, okay, I'm selling, but I'm selling me into it too. I.e. Sarah Blakely and Spanx, right?
100%.
I rarely see women just say, okay, cash the check, move on, and start the next 5. The psychology of that, now I'm going to tap into your sociological self, right? The psychology of that is really interesting.
Right.
We're even seeking different things when we do entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where the like you said, the definition of success is different too. Because, and I think that I don't want to categorize and say men look at dollar amounts and women look at growth, but it might be something like that where your definition of success, it is what it is. And I'm sure it's very multifaceted, but I think that women go into growth with a whole different perspective.
Quantity versus quality, Laura.
Yes.
I think of men want to have all the toys, lots of toys, and women want to have the quality handbag. That's like, I'll treasure it and I'll pass it down.
And the men who really focus on, I'm starting this business because I want to have a better quality of life with my family and I want to have a better work-life balance. How much do they stand out to you? Like when you hear that, you're like, whoa.
Yes.
That's usually a woman saying that. More men need to say that and that could be a very intrinsic desire of them starting a company versus leaving the corporate world.
Yes.
And I think that it's one of those things where but on the other hand, what would you think if a woman said, I started this business because I want to make $1 million? You think, well, okay, that's kind of weird. But like a man could say that no problem.
That's right. Oh my God. Yes, you're right.
Nurturing perspective when they go into things.
Yeah.
Versus men have more of a dollar amount corporate attitude towards growth.
Yeah. And if you bring the opposite viewpoint, then you become a little bit of the unicorn, right? Either way, right? That man that says, oh yeah, I'm in this is solidly my thing. You're looking at him like, oh, he's not really very ambitious. And that woman that is like, yes, I'm in this to grow it and then to sell it in 5 and move on to the next. You're looking at, oh, wow, she's a shark, right? So neither of those things are true, but we have created this false persona that we all kind of play into. And unfortunately, it plays into who's sitting there on the other side of the desk to the investor group and who is supporting and helping to grow in the entrepreneurship community, right? The stigmas play into themselves. And I think we all pick a corner and judge. And I think that is probably the root of what we need to debunk and blow up.
The narrative of somebody's success story is never linear. Yeah. But I think it's being able to say, I'm going to tap into all these different things. And I think that, you think back in high school, did you ever have a financial literacy class that somebody told you how to balance your checkbook and do all that kind of stuff? No.
I did. I went to Catholic girls' school in New Orleans, and so those nuns, they were on it. We actually balanced our checkbook, girl, and I thought that was the most ridiculous class ever. But let me not give them all the credit. We balanced checkbooks, but then we also, oh God, this memory just came back. Our big project was to plan our wedding.
No.
photo album, cutouts, everything. What? You just had me learn how to balance a checkbook. And now you're teaching me, you're literally setting me on a path as a senior high school student into the world with the notion of marriage
Your
as
big
like
project is to get married and do all the work.
crazy. Oh my God. I think I literally legitimately forgot that.
Why? You know, the trauma aspect of it kind of blocked it out.
Girl, I'm so glad I saw bigger things. Not that I don't love my husband and love my kids and my family, but
Sure.
Chantra needed to find some Chantra before she was good for any of this.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm from up north Wisconsin, and we did not have a financial literacy class.
Yes.
Which is probably helpful that I went into banking, and I was in banking for 20 years. I definitely taught my son from day one about finances and being smart with money, and he had his own checking account at 14. And it was funny when he went in to get this tattoo, the tattoo artist, and I went in with him, but that guy looked at me and he's like, so is mom paying or are you paying? And I looked at him like, oh, he's paying.
Yes.
His body, it's his tattoo, he's paying for it.
That's right on.
You know, but I went into it, and we financially struggled for a lot of his young childhood. Mm-hmm. And so we would get to the point that I would say, and I wanted to teach him all the things early. And so I turned anything as a lesson for, growth and being able to understand how the world works. And so we'd go into the grocery store and I'd send him off and I'd say, okay, go get a can of peaches. And so he'd come back and he'd say, Mom, this can of peaches was $1.29. But if I got this bigger one, it's actually worth a little bit more for the money. So how much peaches do you need? Or how many peaches do you need? So he really put a lot of critical thought into not only how much are we paying for something, but what are we going to be using it for? Do we need more than what this can is? Is it, quantity versus, price per. Yeah. And so it was really interesting to watch my son grow up and to see how financially literate he is now. And he really thinks about something before he spends it. And that's all your money. And that's fine if you want to spend it on that, but just understand what you're paying for and how it impacts other things that you want to pay for down the road.
That's right on. Absolutely right. All right, sister. I could keep going all day long, but I respect the fact that you are a badass with 3 businesses and stuff to do. I want to know your response, sort of rapid fire, to some of the proven not perfect truths, right? And so I'll just pick them randomly and you can just tell me, how would you define it? Fortitude.
Inner strength.
Humility.
Recognition of inner weaknesses.
Wow. And courage.
Knowing your worth and knowing your value.
Laura Marie Kaiser, you are all those words, all those things, those definitions live through you. Thank you for being selfless in sharing, the bit of discretionary bit you have to give with so many in the women leadership, women entrepreneurship community. Like I said, in Madison and throughout, the Wisconsin Technical Council and Entrepreneurship Council will never be the same, in my opinion, not having you physically in the rooms. But I know that just like most things, you're never far away. So
yes. And I just wanted to really end with a visual that I constantly always have when I think about you.
Oh God.
So you and I, when you were on a panel for us and you and I had talked back and forth, you walked into the conference, this gorgeous figure with this powerful, badass red dress. And that image will forever be burned into my head of like the ultimate, you were like the ultimate badass. Like I wanted to get down to be like, can I take a selfie with you? So I want to thank you for being such a badass and always being a role model to me of this is exactly the kind of the way you want to walk into the room, the way you want to project yourself. You've always been just a phenomenal, beautiful figure in my life. And I'm so glad that we met when we did and we're forever connected.
Forever connected. Mwah. Blessings to you.
Thank you.